So, comments, feedback?
No, I think it went well. I took a couple minor notes. There's a couple of slides that are just too redundant, so we need to break those up. But
Okay. So we're supposed to be starting right now.
yeah, I'm typing in a message. I just went live, so we're live.
Okay. So what I wanted to suggest is that those first two slides are kind of more related to stuff that I wanted to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was going to, I thought you could do everything else, but I'll do the two exercises.
Okay.
Unless you have something that you want to lead them with the active imagination. But otherwise, it's them going into their space and doing their thing. So we want to finish up, ladies. I know that you're actively involved in lunch, which I apologize for taking so long. I want to get back online as soon as you can. Are you still using mine? Not eating? Well, it's not that I'm not eating. It's just that I haven't had time to really prepare more solid stuff for myself today to know whether it is part of the diet. I mean, after screwing up yesterday, I want to make sure I don't put anything in my mouth unless I know that it's where in the phase that I'm supposed to be in right now. Yeah. And so, in that way, yeah. Any else though? You want more water or something?
Which one?
The altar tray one. Got very little left.
Yeah, I'm not sure that one. Well, I'll have to get another one.
So just so you know, we're gonna be doing a short bit of information and then an exercise. So after the exercise, or while people are finishing up, it was a good time to use the restroom or fill your water bottles or whatever, but we do need to get back. Butts and chairs.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your help.
All of these ones are gone. Do you want me to
Right now, I'm just sorry,
There's an orange kitty sitting in the window.
Caleb's watching us in the window. I can see him. In his big white collar. Okay, are you done? Because you need to go back upstairs. And quiet. All right. Quickly. Okay. So are we gonna get any ideas? Nope. Nice try, Mrs. Red. It's not ridiculous. Okay, but it doesn't go right there. We have to go upstairs now.
Alright, are we actually ready to start yet?
Yeah. We're missing one.
She's in there laughing, you're not actually ready to start. I have one more dish to wash.
Do it later.
Okay. I swear, people's looking.
got some of those slight albino-like
Yeah,
characteristics.
she's a beautiful cat. Beautiful. You know that?
Now we're ready.
Beautiful.
Just waiting for you to tell me.
Beautiful kitty.
All right, we are officially back. We are back to the Spiritual Essentials Workshop. And Oria Luce will regale us with the hierarchy of divine beings.
Okay, so, you know, one of the biggest arguments is, well, my God's better than your God, or we're not talking about the same person, or whatever. And all those are man-made constructs that we apply to these entities that we potentially can connect with. So, is there a master divine plan of who's more important than who? I'm not going to go there. But basically, you know, our highest level attainment should be connecting with the highest thing that we can possibly imagine. And we're going to call that God, for lack of a better word. You know, we're all talking about the highest thing that we can connect with. And then we have a host of angels and archangels and ascended masters and spirit guides and holy guardian angels and daemons and elementals and shadows and all of that. So the key thing here is that we want to know who we're talking to. And so before you get into an intimate relationship with an entity, you darn well better know how to identify them and how to, you know, what place they are in the greater scheme of the universe. So let's quickly apply all of this, these terms now, to the tree of life, to allow us a better idea to kind of see, well, where do some of these parts fit? And
Do you want to go next slide?
yeah. So this was a chart that I made based off of some terminology and understandings that I know. And some of them might be foreign, some of them will probably have a counterpart in the systems or your background that you might have. So again, up here at the top is that most highest divine being. And then we have aspects of the higher feminine and the higher masculine that are up here in the upper triad. And based off of this, we have this is our celestial world. So when we're talking about things that are celestial, we're talking about them in this higher configuration that we probably, until we die, are not going to have real intimate contact with. We're going to get glimpses of it. We're going to send our prayers and adorations in this direction. But, you know, one-on-one contact is a very personal thing. What we crossed here was the abyss, remember? And so when we talk about an ascended master that's in the physical, somebody who physically lives down here in Malkuth, and they have gone and worked this all of these pathways and all of this understanding, there's an actual ritual of crossing the abyss where they are essentially dying and being reborn. And so in that way, we want to think about the fact that what exactly is an ascended master? I mean, we have a guy here in town who claims to be Saint Germain. I happened to be in the locker room at the gym the other day and got a whole download on his sex life. And I can tell you the person that they think is Saint Germain is not necessarily Saint Germain. But that doesn't mean he hasn't held in the past, you know, part of that archetype. He's just allowed it to go into his head and assumes that he is the reincarnation of. And even if he was, he wouldn't be going around sleeping with the local, you know, we won't go there. So the point is that there are, you know, cases where, you know, we have record of Saint Germain's life over several hundred years. So there is the potential for extending your lifetime, for, you know, having those biblical ages of, you know, 300 or 400 years old, where you're actually here to get something done, that you're supposed to be a key pin in what's happening. And so other than that, crossing the abyss means death of the physical body. And what we're really trying to do here is to create something down here that is going to be solid enough to take across that abyss. So just really quickly, with this descending energy coming down, which is the more masculine energy, and with the feminine energy going up the left pillar, we're kind of looking at what are the correspondences between these two paths. In most cases, we talked about the lightning bolt path that comes like this, right? And comes crashing down. Well, many on the patriarchal path will reverse that and work that back up in the same way that they came down. But as they come down, remember there's paths that they didn't cross. They'll hit all the Sephiroth, but they won't necessarily hit each and every path. In which case, to master a particular area, they need to work all the paths that are connected to it. So that's one way of path working. When we talk about the feminine path, we're actually doing the opposite. Where one weaves this way, the other is going to weave the opposite direction. That's giving you that double helical spiral that is containing the essence within, or the reed, the one reed within. Yeah. So with that in mind, we talk about high priests and high priestesses, which is not necessarily gender related. It's simply, in our terminology, designating more of what the function is, and the fact that they really need to work together. You can have a priest call something down, but he's going to do a much better job if he's working with a priestess who's created a space and will hold space for him while he's doing what he needs to do.
Like what you two did at our initiation.
Yeah.
Exactly, and realizing that those could be reversed if I was in fact had the connections to the inner planes. So it doesn't mean that the woman can't be the one who's holding that invocant role, and that someone else is supporting them. So another example of that was like at the invocational dinner where we had Will and Gregory, who were helping with the serving and things like that. They were doing more of a temple attendant or priestess role, but they both have that in their nature to do that kind of work. So it was cool. So the thing about it is that mostly when we're clear down here and we're trying to make contact, let's say your average, psychic on the corner with the neon sign and stuff, they're getting something, right? But they're sending that ping up, and this is about the level that they're working. This is Yesod, and it's the dreaming, and it's going to be also a lot of that phenomenal, the phenomenon, and the hallucinations.
Yeah, it's the lower astral. The astral plane is divided into multiple planes, and so Yesod represents the lower astral, and you go there, and it's a powerful experience, and you think, wow, this is great. And
This one?
Yesod.
Yeah, oh, okay.
And the tendency is to think that you've attained all there is to attain at that level, when in fact you've taken the first step of many, many, many more steps to come. And right there, that's where a lot of the New Agers and the psychics and so on make a career out of whatever their natural gift or ability is. Well, I'm a psychic. I'll give psychic readings the rest of my life until I make enough money to retire in Tahiti. Or I read auras, or fill in the blank psychic ability that they have naturally that maybe they've learned how to apply. So they get that far and they don't go any further. Just to go any further, there's two things. One is, what do they have natural in this life, which can be related to what have they done in previous lives to attain. Most of us will naturally recapitulate and get back to where we left off last time fairly quickly, and that's when we hit our plateau. And then progress slows and we give up and say, oh, I'll just make a career out of this psychic thing.
The thing about here is that, we are seeing and feeling and sensing things but we haven't started a path, we haven't received necessarily any proper training, and we don't necessarily know who or what we're talking to. So some of us in the school know, of people who have made a career out of making these kind of associations, and then at some point they don't know who they're talking to, and they don't know how to control their own machine. And in one way, they're almost possessed because they're, allowing different things to come in. There's people that we know and love who have the Akadua, who are very good at what they do, but, they're self-imposed empaths. They feel like they're being attacked by all sorts of things, and so they're entertaining those things. They're talking to those things that they feel like they're attacked by, rather than having a clear connection to their holy guardian angel and knowing that who and what they're talking to and what they're experiencing. So all of us are going to be offended by what we just said. All of us should think, oh, well, I know who I'm talking to. I know who I'm praying to. I know, I know it's, the highest thing that I can imagine. And that's great. But we're here to tell you that there's more. And we were both offended by that. We've done a lot of spiritual work when we were told, no, you don't know who you're talking to. Okay? So it's part of the process that when you're sending your prayers up, you want them to be going clear up here. That doesn't mean you are up here and working up here. So depending on where you're at, what your vibration is the answer is going to come back from a talking rock sometimes, or a bunny that crosses your path and gives you the secrets to the universe. Because at that particular moment, that's all you can envision. And if you have purposely cut yourself off from God because, oh, I'm pissed off at him, or I don't believe in him, or, if he was a kind and loving God, he would do these types of things, we're projecting a lot of human emotion on something we don't have any clue about. You had a question?
Yeah, how you know where your prayers are going?
Well,
intent is part of it.
Yeah.
exactly. I was just about to say the same thing.
Yeah.
Your intent is part of it. It's sort of like when you send an email to somebody on the internet, it isn't just going to them. It's going out there to everybody who has a computer on the internet, in theory, if they have the code to decipher the address. And if they don't, then the only person you intended it for can decipher it. So unless somebody's a really advanced hacker, your email gets to Great Aunt Martha with your Christmas list, right? And all life is good.
So the problem with that is, again, your intent and your understanding. If you believe only in a God and you're only praying to this male God here, then you're only praying to part of this configuration. If you decided, well, God's really a woman, and so I'm going to pray to the goddess, you've also eliminated the configuration. So it is masculine and feminine united with the divine is what we're going for.
There's a universal source behind God the Mother and God the Father. And if you can connect with that and relate with that universal source, great. Otherwise, many of us relate with God the Father, many of us relate with God the Mother, and just know that there's more that you can intend to contact.
So if what's more frequent though is I don't know God, I don't know Christ, so I reject them because they're part of the patriarchal system, and my parents were Christian and they beat me, and so thus God must be bad, and I don't want to go there. So I'm going to now become a priestess of the Temple of Isis, and I'm going to now do my devotions to Isis. Well, who the hell is Isis? Where does Isis fit into the picture? I'm not negating that she isn't a helper in the process, but she's not God. And I don't think most people would call her the one and only God. Right? So that's where you want to be careful of what you're doing. And again, we're not here to tell you how to do everything, but to give you some signs and passes for it. So in the ancient Judaic system, which is a very patriarchal system, they were given the Holy Kabbalah. And the Holy Kabbalah came in at the time, supposedly, of Moses with the 10 Commandments and all. But while he was up on the mountain and they were down building, golden calves and worshiping those because they figured he wasn't coming back, they really didn't deserve to have the higher law. They weren't ready for it. They were like children. And so most of the Old Testament is a patriarchal God talking to little children. When Christ comes around, it's like our big brother talking to us about the way things are. And that was 2,000 years ago. We're ready for the next message, except for the patriarchy never gave up. So with the Holy Kabbalah, we get the Tree of Life. But that was passed on for centuries from the oldest Levite priests to his son.
First son.
Oldest son. Same thing, right?
I don't know what would happen if the first son died in infancy.
I don't know
Would
either.
it go to the second? I don't know.
Okay. But at the same time, so you can see how slow that progress was to get this information out and disseminated into the population to a place where we could actually use it. It didn't happen until well into the Middle Ages that we start getting access to the Kabbalah. So at the same time, the other sons, what did they get? Well, they got what is it called?
The Book of Abramelin.
The Book of Abramelin.
Well, Abramelin was an individual who compiled a set of knowledge from some sages in Egypt, and it matches the other pillar of the Tree of Life.
I've never heard of it.
Okay, well now you have.
So it's a counterpart where this is talking more of the masculine structure on how a man might organize the world. This is talking more from the feminine perspective. Both are accurate, both are necessary. All of us need to be balancing our masculine and feminine aspects. And so in that way, even though you may be on a patriarchal path, you may need to balance that then by working with this other kind of stuff. So what this is really doing, when you get clear down here into the bottom, we're seeing this is more of the lifetime, okay? This is where we might think we're working and where the guides and gods are that we're residing with. This is where the archetypal aspects of those come from. But in reality, this is what we're really affecting. And so within the patriarchy, we have a high priest, which would be what we call the Melchizedek priesthood, or a higher level priesthood. And then there's the Mosaic law, which is more like an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, but it's part of the lower priesthood, which was what was given to the Israelites. Now, as we begin to lose momentum in that, we see aspects of the way those cultures then would deal with fear. So they start using more fear-based things like sacrifice or exorcism or even Satanism as a way of a more earth-based way of how the patriarchy would work with spirit. The flip side of that is the way women would do it. So we have the high priestess, and I feel strongly that a lot of shamanism falls into this more natural, intuitive way of doing things. It's not that the shaman doesn't have rules or needs to follow them, but it's much more intuitive and touchy-feely than a very structured way that the patriarchy would do the same thing. And then we have, what does that say?
Lower magic.
Lower magic, and then under that, zombies, voodoo, ghosts, and black magic.
Okay, so lower magic works, okay? Lower magic, how many of you have read The Secret on how to manifest? You guys missed that one? You seen the
Saw
movie?
the movie.
Okay, so the movie. Essentially, little Johnny wants a new bike. You know, he's supposed to be able to, focus all of his intention and intent on manifesting that bike, and it will magically appear. Where's all this smoking coming from? Because I can see it in the light, and you're coughing, and
I pulled one of these out and dust went everywhere. I saw it in the light.
yeah, okay. So the difference between high magic and lower magic is not black magic versus white magic. It has more to do with an altruistic reason or intent as to why you're working. If you legitimately need a new car so that you can go to your job, so that you can provide for your family, then it's something that you require to do your work, in which case you can put out a higher level ritual in order to make that happen. But if you simply want a new car because you've already got 5 cars and they're the wrong color and you need one that goes 7 times as fast as that and you need to look cool, it's not that you can't manifest that. Lower magic will work. If you put all of your intention on one thing, it's going to work. So think about all of these hoarders of wealth out in the world. They work really, really hard at making and hoarding money. And so they're able to do that. Does it make them happy? You know, is it benefiting humanity? Is it, you know, whatever. So that's the difference, is really, is this for being done for a higher level purpose or not? And so that's where high magic and low magic fall into, and you can see if you start doing things for yourself, you're going to start getting into iffy kind of things. And I put voodoo and zombieism and stuff like on that because, quite frankly, these are still human beings we're talking about. These are not ghosts. These are not, you know, apparitions. This is humans, and we have plenty of zombies right now walking around the country with their head in their iPhones. So we live in a zombie apocalypse already. So if you're waiting for something gorier to come out, just, you know, hold out.
Just wait a couple weeks, yeah.
But, you know, then there is the actual thing about ghosts and disembodied spirits and things that get stuck here, grounded in this Malkuthian reality. They don't know how to get out, and what they really, really need is an exit door. They need to be shown how to move out of the space. They don't even really care that much about haunting their castle or whatever if they know that they can be shown how to step into the light. So all of this starts to get yucky and demonic looking when we're looking at it down here at this Malkuthian earth-based format. When we look at all of these same principles all the way back up, we can see how we can take the same things to a higher level. Questions about that? So that's in your handout. Like I said, this is just my understanding at this point in my career on how I've been able to categorize what I know to be true and still have it relate to the tree of life.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
I noticed under the male pillar, at the very bottom, you have sacrifice, exorcism, and Satanism.
Uh-huh.
And under the female, you have the lower magic, zombies, black magic type
Right.
stuff. So I'm just wondering why those are divided up that way,
Okay.
male and female.
So, and again, it's not male, female, it's masculine, feminine, and it's
Energy.
really
Got
the
it.
type of path that you're taking.
Okay.
So, if you take a more masculine path, or let's just say, for lack of a better word, the right-hand column, then you're engaging in more organized structures.
Okay.
So, organized Satanism, organized, in the Catholic Church, it's organized, and yet in a fear-based way. This is how they handle these things, is through exorcism. You know, there's a procedure,
Right.
and it's actually written, how to do a Catholic exorcism. You know, you can look it up. So, sacrifice, it's like, in one way this is kind of empirical. You know, we throw the virgin in the volcano and the rain comes back. Wow, that worked, so let's keep doing that, you know.
What a waste of a virgin.
Yeah. So, and then these priesthoods are very structural. So when you go into like a Masonic lodge, it's going to be very structured. You know, the same exact energy will look completely different in a feminine temple.
Okay.
But we don't know what that looks like because it's been beat out of us for 4,000 years.
Okay.
So on the flip side then, think more from intuition. What do women do when they're fear-based and something comes up? We're gonna put a hex on that.
We run to the men.
Right, yeah. So, but these are things that women will tend to employ for those same purposes. So rather than doing it in a very structured sort of way, we do it in a more of a witchy kind of way, or
One of the things I'll say about the one at the very bottom, which is black magic, is black magic is primarily using your will to interfere with somebody else. So exerting your force over somebody unjustifiably. That's the kind of the core basic definition of black magic. It's also magic, and some of these rituals are performed in the dark at night under the moon, and of course that's the path of the moon between Malkuth and Nitzak. So that's why it's over on that side.
Okay, so what is the next slide?
Next slide is meditation and prayer, and then we get into the Celtic Tree of
Okay.
Life.
So why don't you go ahead and talk about that, and then I'll come back and lead that.
That exercise.
Dylan? Where are you at? Okay, did you just throw that diaper down here? Okay, well just know that I can see everything that happens behind this curtain, and it's on film.
That
So,
animal I can see.
meditation and prayer are two similar and related subjects, but there are distinct differences between them. If you're raised in a traditional religion, you're taught to pray. And you're given formulas, like the Lord's Prayer in the Christian church is a specific prayer, and it's also a formula. And in the formula it contains, actually follows a Kabbalistic tree of life. That'll be a good homework exercise, if any of you want to take that on, is to relate the Lord's Prayer to the Kabbalistic tree of life. It's a formula for how to use the patterns on the tree of life to invoke the forces of the universe. So the attitude of prayer in most religions is you're going to send a message to God, most of which take the form of a request, not nearly enough take the form of gratitude. So yes, let's pray for rain. Yes, let's pray for food. Let's pray to vanquish our enemies so that we can live in peace. And then they forget to close the loop by saying thank you. One of the attitudes prevalent in most religions, I'm not going to go so far as to say all, because I know of some where this isn't the case, but most religions will say, or take the attitude that a prayer is a little bit like writing a letter or a postcard. You stamp it, you drop it in the mail, and someday you might get an answer. Throughout most of its history, all the organized Christian churches, so the Roman Catholic Church and everyone derived from them, which means like the Greek Orthodox, the Russian Orthodox, the Episcopalians, and quite frankly even the Lutherans, who even though they rebelled against the Catholic Church's structure back in the Middle Ages, they didn't go back and add back in the things that the Catholic Church had thrown out, and they didn't correct most of the flaws in the Catholic system. So most of those religions basically say you can't talk to God directly. You have to go through a priest, you have to go through a minister, you have to go through a guru. And if the minister or priest gets the hit that you are worthy of an answer, other than the half a dozen answers they teach priests at priesthood school, to say, squelch any signs of waking up and do it this way, is you're taught that when you pray, specifically don't expect an answer. That's the mantra they'll give you. That's in light, in spite of the fact, rather, that even in the writings of the New Testament, where we have the words as attributed to Christ, as well as in many of the so-called Gnostic Gospels, which are books attributed to the other apostles besides Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. There were actually 8 others, and they all had their own teachings, they all had their own Gospels, and including Judas, which kind of makes you question, did he really die the day Christ was crucified, if he has a Gospel, which they quickly threw out, right? At the Nicene Conference, is in the writings attributed to Christ, it very clearly says you can expect an immediate answer from God, and that it even gives you the formula for how to do that. Now, when the New Age movement that I talked about earlier today came upon us, ramping up from the 60s into the 70s, and then by the time we got to the 80s, it was kind of in full force. This concept of mostly Eastern forms of meditation came into being, or it came into common understanding here in the West. And the expectation when you meditate is that you will get an immediate answer. You sit down, you meditate, you pose your question, you get in that nice aligned state, you pose your question, and you get an immediate answer. So part of the difference between prayer and meditation is that expectation. The expectation of whether or not you will get an immediate answer. So there's old adages that say things like, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. If you think you can do something, if you think your little old David can run out there and slay Goliath with your slingshot, you can. But if you think you can't, you're like the other 5,000 Israelites in that army who said, I can't do that, so they ran away. So it comes down to expectation. If you think you will get an immediate answer from God, then you can. Now, so intent and expectation, kind of the two sides of the coin of one main difference between meditation and prayer. The other is the unique aspects of many of the best forms of meditation, when they've been tested scientifically, have been found that they induce a brainwave frequency that mimics the brainwaves of REM sleep while you're still conscious. So most of the Asian, Eastern, Indian meditation techniques all revolve around inducing the brainwave frequencies that match REM sleep, which makes it easier to connect up the tree of life to your own higher planes of consciousness, which means that's why it's more likely to get an answer when you're in a meditative state as opposed to just a prayerful state. So that's a key difference. So at the various workshops that we've taught at least 3 or 4 different types of meditation, and they will all induce that correct brainwave frequency state. And so those of you who are at the level 4, you now know that you can go out and you make contact instantly. So that's the biggest difference, and if this is all new to you, like some of you who may be watching, know that that's true. So is there a difference? Yeah, your intent and how you hold your attention, right? A lot of the early meditation techniques and textbooks will say, oh, you focus on the candle, you focus on this sound, you focus on a mantra that you repeat. And it's to give yourself something to get your conscious mind to focus on something else other than what it would naturally focus on.
Yeah.
But even that technique is in itself a crutch. It's like training wheels on a bike. Your goal is to ride the bike without training wheels. And so ultimately you get into some of the other techniques that talk about calming the mind, stilling the mind. And especially some of the Buddhist techniques, that's the goal. Get to the quiet mind and that's it. No, that just means you have a clear channel established. You open the clear channel everything's working, and then you sit there and do nothing? If you could know with 100% certainty that you're going to go to God's door and be invited in and sat down and say, Sister Yvonne, Sister Patricia, you get one question, what do you want to ask God?
Wow.
Okay? Think of that. Is it really the mundane, everyday, blue pill kind of things that you would want to ask God?
Tell me about my love life.
Oh, God.
Oh, yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah. So, when you sit down to meditate and or pray, and you can do both at the same time. You can induce a meditative state and then say a more traditional prayer.
You can also set your intent with a prayer and make that initial contact and put your request out for information, and then go into more of a meditative contemplation, which will allow you to possibly receive an answer now rather than later.
Right. Yeah. So there's other things you can do to help this process. So just to close the loop on that, ask God a question. Every time you sit down to meditate, have a question. It could be a question about your higher work, question about guidance. It could be key questions about your physical world life. If you're at a crux or a crossroads and you need to know, should I take the job in Guam or not?
Take
Yes.
it.
Yes.
Yes, go to Guam.
I'll
But-
buy him the suitcase.
But do that. And the best way to make sure you have an intent for each meditation is write it down in your journal. I do that every day. Except today, because I slept in and I barely got up and got dressed and got everything ready for the class today. So I didn't get to do my morning meditation. So I'm kind of bummed about that, because I can never make that one up. There's no guarantee that what I would have gotten this morning will be the same thing that I get next time. So other things you can do to facilitate that process is the cleansing and purification processes that you can do. You keep yourself pure and worthy to go have those kind of meditative experiences. You keep yourself clean, internally and externally, energetically and physically. Set your space and an altar. Make sure you've been practicing over a period of time your exercises in attention. If you're really easily distracted by the mosquito buzzing on the other side of the room, and I can't possibly meditate. It's like, how are you going to do it, meditate or pray, in the middle of battle, when you need to get guidance from God? And society has come crashing down, and you're at that fork in the road, kind of like that Celestine prophecy thing. You need to be able to go into that place of power state and get the right answer, left or right. You journal, you practice this. I like to do almost, not quite, but almost automatic writing. When I meditate and I pose my questions, I get into the state, the answers start coming, and I just start writing. And stuff comes out, and it's like, I never would have said that.
Yeah, I wrote that.
Yeah. No. This has to be part of that personal practice. We have harped on this today, and we will continue to harp on it. You're going to hear more about it, because this isn't a spiritual theory. It needs to become a spiritual practice. You need to be able to actually ride the bike yourself, not watch videos of somebody else riding a bicycle. If you want the physical benefits to your biological machine of having exercised, you need to actually go exercise. You have to take it from the theory that, yes, exercise will be good for me, to actually getting out there and moving your own body with your own muscles until you're out of breath and perspiring heavily. And then you have an exercise practice. So this meditation and prayer practice has to leave the world of theory and move into the world of practice. Okay, the Celtic Tree of Life exercise.
So I'm gonna need you to come back over and you need to readjust something. Maybe it's the chair. Maybe move diagonally. That should do it. Okay.
Okay?
And then I don't know if I don't even know what the next slide is, but I messed it up again. I don't know how to quickly get back to those other screens. 'Cause when I try to do it, it pulls up all
No.
this other stuff.
Here, let me show you how I did it. Is I just left all the windows up. And then I had it over here where I could click on any one. And then we can just go like so.
Okay. Well, what I was trying to do is I don't need to look at you. I can see you. I wanted this over here so I can see the comments. So I had this moved over here for a reason. And then when I moved it, I realized that we weren't seeing your whole face. See, I don't understand why it does that.
Yeah, it's kind of sensitive.
Isn't things in red,
Okay.
gray right now? That's probably why.
So we don't want to be on that yet.
Okay, so you're going to go lead an exercise.
Yeah.
Okay.
So everybody needs to get their handout that I gave you. There's some lined paper in there. And we're going to do a guided visualization. Some of you have done this before. This is one of the spiritual books that I started out that helped me start to understand the difference between shamanism and other forms of spiritual work. And there's some really good stuff in this, especially if you're into Celtic stuff. It gives you a lot of examples of what these things mean by using the legends and all of that kind of stuff. And all of that is not necessarily a specific path. It's kind of a conglomeration of the Wiccan and the pagan and the Celtic stuff. But there's some really good exercises in here. And since we've been talking about the Tree of Life, realize that there's trees of life represented in many, many different cultures. And so the Tree of Life in Celtic mythology is pretty simple, and there's a picture of it there on your worksheet, which is it's mostly a trunk of a tree with branches and with roots that are interconnected. So it's showing that interconnectedness between the as above, so below. It's showing us the flow of energy, like when we are doing energy work and we're pulling it up the center column and out and around us, creating that resonance around us. We can go the other direction with it. This is the same way the magnetism works on the earth. It's going up a core, it's creating this force field around us. So that's kind of what's being represented in that Tree of Life, is that you can go into the branches, you can go into the trunk, you can go into the roots. And these are really representing those three triads of the Tree of Life. And it's not so much that you know, if you go into the lower realm, you're not going into hell, you're not going into Hades, you're not going into the shadow realm, you're not going into anything dark and evil, but you're going to see and experience something different there because of the energy than you will when you go up to the top of the tree. So essentially the idea is you're facing the tree and there's either a hole in the tree, or sometimes it's represented as a cave in the base of a mountain. And when you enter into that base, you're going to experience a heightened sense of this world. When you spiral down into the roots, you're going to be, and we're not going in. We're not going to go in today. There's whole separate exercises for going in and navigating these spaces. You're only going to be prompted to open the door and look. So try to be present with that. I'll give you a few minutes to be there and look around, and then you're going to be guided back up to the upper realm. And when we're done, then you want to stop and journal and capture as much as you can. But don't overthink it. The problem with guided meditations is we tend to try to visualize exactly what's being said instead of really seeing and really being awake and present with what's there. Okay, so there's some terminology in here that talks about getting to your relaxation state, and I think all of you may remember that from the level 4 on how to get to that place where you're aligning your body, feet on the floor, kind of thing, and releasing, or getting to a place of power, basically releasing all of those draws and pulls that are surrounding you, releasing social masks and expectations, and getting into that more dreamer stare type of state. Begin your relaxation techniques. Release from your toes and work up through your body to the top of your head. You may need to spend extra time on the muscles of the shoulders, the neck, and the jaw, as these areas often seem to be the repositories of stress. When you feel relaxed, then visualize white light around you. Breathe it in. Surround yourself with it. Like a cocoon. Before going any further, see yourself taking all the problems that are bothering you and dropping them into a well or pond. This is a necessity. You do not want to carry any negatives with you on your journey. Now you need to look for your center pole. Now this is a term you might think of more in relationship to your reed or your center column, but basically connecting your poles of earth to the celestial realm. It may appear as a mountain with a cavern at the base, or a tall tree with deep roots. Go to this center pole, explore it with all your senses. Now, either go into the cavern at the base of the mountain or enter a hole near the roots of the tree. Feel yourself walking or sliding downward, always spiraling to the left in gentle turns. Soon you find yourself standing before a porthole. This can be a door or just an opening. If the door is closed, open it. Stand right on the threshold of the opening, but do not try to enter at this time. Look out upon the underworld scenery. If you still have negative subconscious programming that you have not managed to root out, you may find yourself looking at some pretty bizarre scenes, probably colored by Christian indoctrination. However, this will only be an overlay. If you watch closely, you will see flickers of true images beneath these false pictures. Do not struggle to remove the false. Just keep telling yourself that it isn't real and the true underworld scenery will eventually take over. As as you stand looking through the opening, be aware with all your senses. Note the colors and the beings that are visible. If you can detect odors on the little breezes, just make note of what you see and sense. When you're ready, turn to the tunnel and move swiftly up it. When you reach the cave or root entrance, you will see before you a short flight of steps leading straight up. Climb these until you stand at the top, overlooking a shining river of light. This is the middle world of space-time journeying. Don't try to enter this river now. Instead, think of a period of history that interests you. Watch the river closely. Soon it will become like a mirror or a crystal ball, with some scene of the desired era floating about you. Study it with all your senses. Until you are capable of making this time journey, you will find that some of your senses will not be as clear by just watching. When you are finished with your visual exploration, turn to your right. An upward tunnel or stairs will be there. Quickly climb this tunnel or stairs. You will find that they circle always to the right in a long spiral. Soon you are at the top. A door or opening awaits you. If the door is closed, open it. Stand on the threshold and look out upon the upper world. Here again, subconscious programming may color your first views of this other world. Wait patiently for the true picture to reveal itself. Don't try to enter at this time, but take in all the sights, sounds, and smells, and be aware of any beings who appear. When you're finished, slide back down the tunnel or descend the stairs until you come to the opening. Exit the center place and move toward a glowing ball of white light you see before you. merge with the light. Feel yourself once more in your physical body. Rest a few moments while wiggling your toes and fingers to restore circulation. And when you feel totally back, open your eyes and remember to record your experiences in your shamanic journal. Do you want to lead a short discussion on the, mostly focused on not what they saw, but the differences between the worlds?
Sure.
Let's see that book for a minute if I could, please. Thank you.
Okay, why don't you capture your last thoughts as a few bullet points that maybe you can fill in later. Who can say what the qualities were that you experienced with pertaining to the lower world?
Darkness,
Darkness. What else?
fairies and gnomes.
Fairies and gnomes.
It was almost like a negative image. It's like the negative, like a picture negative.
Yeah, yeah.
Of the world above.
Everything's
But-
reversed.
Yeah, but there was lights, little twinkling lights, like lightning bugs, kind of flickering lights
Okay.
in the darkness.
Oh, I was looking into the ocean.
You were looking into an ocean. Okay. Those are things you saw. What were the qualities?
The qualities.
It had a richness to it.
Okay. Darkness, richness,
It felt denser.
denser.
You know, there's a thickness to it, huh?
Dark, rich, dense, thick. Okay. That's more what I was looking for. So then you came up to the middle world.
There's an alarm going on.
There was
There's an alarm going on.
Oh, now she heard.
a car alarm. What kind?
Like, not a, it went off now. Like an alarm clock.
Okay, let's. So the middle world. What were the qualities you experienced there?
It was not as dense. It was like, it started to feel lighter. It started to feel like more airy. Like you could, it was like you could, it was like breathing, almost like breathing light.
Okay. What else? What about
Um,
you, Sarah? Or should I say Muad'Dib?
Whatever you want to call me.
You know where the name Muad'Dib comes from, right? There is a series of novels, they're on the recommended reading list, that are science fiction, called the Dune series, written by Frank
Yeah.
Herbert. The key protagonist, at least in the first couple of books, is Paul Atreides, who is a duke, and when he goes to the planet Arrakis, which is also known as Dune, he is adopted into the native tribes there that are called the Fremen, and he has to claim his shamanic name. So he takes the name, he doesn't even know the word, of a little jumping mouse, lizard mouse, so kind of like a kangaroo mouse in the southwest deserts. And
How
the
cute.
name of the kangaroo mouse in that world is Muad'Dib.
I like that
So
name.
that became his name as the leader of the free peoples, and he was both the shaman and the king, basically. And so his Fremen name was Muad'Dib. That's why I'm calling you Muad'Dib. So, what did you experience in the middle world, Muad'Dib?
I don't know, a lot of flashing images. I was getting kind of lost.
Okay. What about qualities of the space?
I don't know, everything just seemed really fast paced.
Past.
Yeah.
What else?
Playful.
Playful. Were you each able to select a historical period and go look?
Kind of get bouncing around.
Okay. What about the qualities? Oh, crap. What about the qualities of the upper world?
Vastness.
What's that?
Vastness.
Vastness.
That's actually a good word for it. It felt immense.
Mm-hmm.
Immense. Vast. What else?
I just felt love.
Love.
Yeah.
Okay.
And joy, a lot of joy.
Love, joy, vast, immense. As opposed to dense, dark, thick. What were some of those other ones about the lower world?
Like, who said
Thick.
flashing?
Dark.
That was this one.
I did see like lightning,
Yeah.
lights.
Okay.
That was like the only light there was, is the little lightning
Yeah,
bugs.
twinkles.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and move on because we don't have all day. Oh, here's this thing I was looking for. Next subject up is talking about your ego self and your shadow self. And related to both of these concepts is our essential self. So the Tao Te Ching says, knowing others is wisdom, but knowing the self is enlightenment. Entrance to the ancient temples, all the ancient mystery temples had over the door the words, know thyself. The ego, I think of it as a subroutine being run by the human biological machine. It's kind of the innate intelligence and identity of the human biological machine. It's a lot of the defense mechanisms which keep us alive. The saber-toothed tiger attacks, it's that innate instinct to either run away, up a tree, down a hole, or if there's none of those close by, you pick up a rock, you pick up a club, at least in the days before you learned how to make spears. And once you did, you learned to always keep your spears with you. Not locked at home in a safe because somebody somewhere might be offended by the fact that you own a spear. So you keep those spears with you, and if you can't run away, because in terms of survival is the only desired outcome. You do that by climbing a tree, you do that by running down a hole. It's all good because you survived, and that was the only objective. But failing that, you pick up a spear and you wade in and you go to battle. And there's no Hoyle present. There's no rules. What's that famous book of boxing rules? No, not Robert's rules. Rules. Anyway, there's you don't hit like this.
Oh,
like,
Muhammad Ali?
No, way hundreds of years before Ali. I'll think of it right after we go offline, I'm sure. The only rule is survive, and hence win. Your ego is what does that. And all of you had ancestors that were really good at that.
Otherwise we wouldn't be here.
Otherwise you wouldn't be here, exactly.
It's kind of like autopilot.
It is,
You
right
know,
away.
so in other words, it's a system that will keep you hopefully out of trouble, you know, during most events.
Yeah.
But we rely on it too much and we don't think about it. So what we're really doing when we do the higher work is taking ourselves off autopilot. which means you need to know what the hell you're doing before
Right.
you take it off autopilot.
That's a good analogy. We'll stick with that as we go through here. The ego is very self-centered by design and by necessity. If we didn't have a strong ego, we wouldn't have survived the process of being born and acclimatizing into a culture and growing to adulthood. The ego is what made that possible. Then, when it's time to be an adult and function in a society, there's higher methods of functioning where we have to put our ego, that autopilot, on the side. We turn off autopilot. We have to fly. We have to create those links between the pilot, i.e. the essential self, and the biological machine, and the ego kind of has to sit in the co-pilot seat now. And most egos aren't real thrilled about that at first. But wait, it's all about I. And when you go on allowing the essential self to take over and pilot, it's about we humanity, my higher self and my essential self. We are here on a mission, and it becomes more about the mission at that point. So learning the difference between the essential self and the ego is important. And knowing that the ego it's been a great and loyal servant all your life, and now it's time for the ego to take a break and somebody else to drive for a while. And we've all been on road trips with that one jerk who will never, ever, ever let anybody else drive. Doesn't matter how many times they get lost, how many times they drive into a ditch and have to get pulled out, doesn't matter how many times they can't find the right restaurant or hotel, they won't let anybody else drive. So that's your ego in its worst state. Now, the shadow self, and this artwork I think is phenomenal.
It's great.
Bonnie, I don't know where
It's
she found it,
captivating.
but Aurea found it. So,
Leave it to her.
in some ways, the shadow self is the mirror representation, the dark side of our ego. It's not the dark side representation so much of our essential self. So the shadow self represents a lot of things. It's often viewed as a negative thing. We shouldn't want a shadow self. We want to overcome the shadow self. But that's not quite right.
A lot of juice is there.
Yeah, there's a lot of juice, a lot of energy we reclaim. Like with the rocks exercise at the intensive, we reclaimed a lot of energy, which was basically kind of, in a way, tied up in the shadow self, some of it. So the shadow self can include everything about ourself that's potentially good, but somebody told us was bad. So the first time you tried to pick up a musical instrument and play it, and some weird squawking noise came out, and your older brother or sister walked by and says, "What are you doing that for? You'll never be any good. Give that crap up." So you give it up.
Mm-hmm.
And that musician side of you is stuffed down in your shadow self. Whether it's athletics or music or writing or poetry or singing or anything really. Where we allowed somebody else to dictate what we're good at and what we should be doing with our life. Those urges and desires to be all we can be, those got shoved in our shadow self. Now when you look at tarot cards and you read the simplistic books of here's what this card means, but if it's upside down then it means something else. Maybe not. What it's really trying to tell us is there is a spectrum or a spread or a range of qualities associated with each tarot card. When you're doing things well, it can mean this. When you're doing things bad, it can mean that. And it has to be interpreted in light of the question, in light of all the other cards in the spread, and in light of where the person's at. And it doesn't matter if the card's right side up or not. It could be inverted, and it could be all about good things. It can be right side up, and it's really all about the less desirable aspects of that card. So the ego is on a continuum with the shadow self. The ego, carried to extremes, basically becomes the shadow self. So if you never learn how to cooperate and live in a society, and it's all about me, and you're selfish and mean and bitter and grouchy, and you're a Scrooge before he had the 3 ghosts visit him, then that's the dark side of the ego. But the other side is you can be strong, you can be independent, you can provide strength for yourself and your family, your friends, your acquaintances, and you can be all that, but you can be the strong warrior who is a loving husband and a kind father, right? So they're all part of the ego, but it's where's the degree? So the shadow self is potentially where we've stuffed all the negative aspects, because yes, I'm a barbarian and I'm proud of it, and I have ancestors who sacked Rome and I know it and I can prove it. But that doesn't mean today I'm going to run out and start putting heads on pikes no matter how much they deserve it, right? But in my shadow self, I have that. It's there. I've met it. I've talked to it. I've had conversations with this. And this is sometimes what's referred to as the watcher at the threshold. So this is the guard who keeps you from out of the higher planes.
Watcher at the threshold.
And until you're ready to go there.
Oh,
So this will be a big scary looking demon, or a big scary looking barbarian warrior, or something with horns coming out of the palms of some big ugly monster, big mean thing. And if you walk up to the door and you go, ah, and run away, guess what? You're not ready for that space. You don't know yourself, and you haven't absorbed all these qualities into you. The goal is to place the ego and the shadow self under the conscious, deliberate control of your essential self. One second. If it hasn't happened yet, it will at some point. You will have a dream, you will have a vision, you'll experience something in meditation where you make contact with your shadow self. The classic is in the second Star Wars movie of the series of 3 that were done well in the original series, where Yoda takes Luke and sends him into the cave, and he tells Luke, don't take your weapons in. But Luke senses that there's evil in the cave. You want to take my weapon? No, you don't need them, just go in. Well, he ignores his teacher. Didn't work out well, as you know. He goes in there, he confronts something that looks like Darth Vader, whom he has seen at this point in the flesh several times. He allows his emotions, his negative emotions, to take over. He gets angry, and he kills this Darth Vader-like character, and the mask pops off, and it's him, Luke's own face inside.
what are they doing up there?
I don't know, but I'm going to have to go yell at him again.
So the term ego and
Hey up
shadow
there, can you not be moving and banging things around, please?
come to
I
us
don't care,
from
just stop it.
Jungian psychology. So, do you guys know much about Jung?
Carl Jung.
Jung.
No,
So-
not him.
There was, in the field of psychology, you know, we all know about Sigmund Freud in the early 1900s, made a lot of advances, and Jung came along after him, utilized some of his work and put it in a different perspective, but there were several important contributions that Jung made to the spiritual world, and one is that he acknowledges the dreaming and a certain level of spirituality. And then he's spawned what are called Jungian analysts, which are people who have studied his work and taken it further. And so in that way, ego and shadow are terms that Carl Jung coined specifically talking about the human biological machine. He wasn't reaching at that point into anything to do with the spirit. And he was trying to make this differentiation really between your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. So that's another way of looking at this. The ego is more conscious because the ego is the thinking part of you that thinks you're it. You're the whole ball of wax. And so when you say I, that's the ego talking. But then there's the shadow, which is, first of all, some of that is your internal workings, when you, that part of your mind that none of us can ever know. I mean, we will never be able to see the world from your perspective, to really be inside of you looking out. But that subconscious is also part of this mechanism of survival and patterns and archetypes. So the archetypes then are like a logo or a symbol or an icon, where it's not just a word, it's you look at it and you grasp much more than, just that one little symbol.
One of the Hermetic authors even said that the tarot was the best representation of this symbolism, the Hermetic symbolism that we have. And the tarot and the tree of life and Jungian psychology and astrology are all intimately linked, because Jung's archetypes are the archetypes as shown on the tarot, in the Kabbalah, and so forth. So that is, thank you for bringing up the Jung psychology stuff, because this you can think of as representing the ego, as representing your conscious mind, both the good and the bad and the ugly. Whereas this, the shadow self, can be thought of then as representing the subconscious aspects of ourselves, both the good, the bad, and the ugly.
And the subconscious is what's coming through in your dreams and your meditations and your conversations with God, and what you see and are drawn towards when you're out in the world. Let's say we all go down to Soul Connection. We're all going to be drawn to certain things that may not be the same things. I mean, yeah, they're pretty, they're sparkly, and we can all appreciate that, but each one of us is going to be drawn to something because it has something to do with our true will. And so your subconscious mind is what knows that. And so it's the shadow where we need to go to look at different aspects of ourselves that we're not seeing on a day-to-day conscious level.
Right.
So even like Aqua Mouse here, is it a mouse?
It's whatever you want it to be.
Okay, because I thought, well, I don't know. I know ears. We could be go kitty cat,
It could
and,
be a jaguar,
and it could
too.
be a fox.
She thought, now that
She's
she
an
knows
aqua
where
fox.
the name Muad'Dib comes from, I think she likes it.
Is the shadow side actually more intelligent than
No,
the conscious?
not necessarily. It may seem that way at times because it knows things the conscious doesn't. It's a repository of facts and maybe a repository of history that the conscious side has forgotten, but that doesn't necessarily make it any more intelligent.
Well, doesn't the shadow side actually see things as they are?
Maybe.
Maybe
without
not.
the mask.
Maybe not. If you stored in your shadow self the idea that you're a bad musician, that's not necessarily accurate. If you decide, you know what, my older sibling who told me I couldn't be a good musician is messed up in every other aspect of their life, why would I pay any attention to them? I want to be a musician. I'm going to learn to play a piano or a trumpet or whatever it is, right? And then you go off and you become a great musician. So there's no guarantee that what's stored in here is any more accurate than what's stored here. It's just that what's in here, the conscious mind usually is not aware of.
So the reason I brought up the consciousness is where you had left off is you were saying about both the ego and the shadow, that we need to be conscious of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so what that means is if the shadow represents the subconscious, it means bringing a conscious light into your shadow, bringing the light into the shadow. And
Okay.
at the same time, part of your consciousness that your ego that's aware and awake now is aware that there is darkness or shadow within the self. That you're now bringing some of that darkness out into the light.
You have to be able, it's just like the yin yang symbol, right? You have to embrace your total being. This is a difference between shamanism and most of the feel-good, fluffy stuff, New Age doctrines, which are basically encourage you to avoid the shadow self. Avoid anything that doesn't make you feel good. Oh, if you don't feel good, don't go there. It's guaranteed to make sure you don't attain.
That's half the shadow's problem, is we stuff things
Right.
on that side.
Yeah. Okay, moving right along. Awakening and contacting the essence. I mean, I could have gone on for another half hour on just that other slide. The essence is you, the real you. The term that is most often used in various higher level systems is your essential self. When you strip away the layers, when you strip away the social masks, when you strip away the lifetimes, what lies behind all that? That's the true essence of what you, the eternal you, is. And
I'm sorry, I thought you were.
no, you go. I was just pausing, but you go ahead.
So this particular image I want you to look at and see the
amazing.
three-dimensionality of it. First of all, you see that center core of light that goes right through in the middle, all the way from Malkuth up to Tifereth. You see that center column really clearly. What you don't notice is what we're seeing is the two inverted triangles, right? So that gives us our six-pointed star.
But they're three-dimensional.
Right. Can you sense that they're three-dimensional by the way
Here
they're
to here,
slightly
then it's
tilted?
going back over there, back over there.
There's a so then look down at the bottom and see that platform. I don't know if you remember when we were talking about the Vesica Pisces in the beginning and how that broke down into almost a floor that tilts up, that creates a base, that creates that three-dimensional platform. And then up above we have almost like a globe-like thing that is creating that roundness up at the top.
That's a yantra.
It is a yantra.
A yantra is a visual meditation.
Okay.
And each god, lord, goddess has a yantra that you meditate upon.
Okay, so that's an example of how to use this image in a system that exists out there. So what that tells me is you're basically meditating on the Godhead. You're meditating on that divine space and all of those that hold that crown of creation there. So you can see now a little bit how we take that sacred geometry and we place the essential self in that. Where that body is on that spectrum of light in the middle will vary based off of where your energy levels are. So when we do a week long a Kadua seminar and we're all cranked up from using the energy all weekend, we're seriously stretching, and you can see the perspective that's been created here. We're seeing this from this perspective of being very high. And this is why when you do, psychedelics and stuff, it will take you to these spaces. You just don't know how to navigate them. So in this case, we don't want to be off in left field in other places. We want to stay on that center column. It's like an elevator going up and down that center shaft. And that means we have a firm connection or ground to Malkuth, and we have that higher point connection in the celestial realm.
So, in the level 4 class, we spent a lot of time on different techniques, that all of which will make it easier for you to contact your essence. Keep in mind, the essence is not the holy guardian angel. But those techniques only work if you use them. It's sort of like filling up a bucket a teaspoon at a time. You have to do it over and over and over, and then you will reach a certain level of proficiency whereby you make that contact with the essence. And the more you do this, the more you realize how unawake you were, how unaware you were in your blue pill days. Okay, moving right along. Oh, are we on the right thing?
Hold on, maybe I can just do it.
Yeah, just do it. Click the arrow on, there we go.
Can I just say something about this slide in general? This is important higher level information, and yet it starts by working now at a lower level. And the premise here is the reason I'm bringing this up at all is there wasn't really a good place to talk about this in the series of images, in the series of thoughts, but it's a very real personal place where you can start working with the energy. So you've all have the Akadiwa, you've all been using it more on an exterior level where you're sending it out or sending it to self into certain parts. But this is a matter of becoming aware of where you store your energy in the body and how you move energy in the body. So we've talked about a lot of things. Now can you see, just looking at these three images, the center column on the tree of life, going right through the center of each of these. That's where the chakras are. The chakras are on that center pillar. When you superimpose the tree of life over your body, this is what you're doing, is those pathways that are going back and forth around the energy as we take pathways are this spiraling of energy through the body. And the centers of light in between are an indication that your reed is clear, your chakras are balanced, and this kundalini force or this spiraling energy can move. You don't want to really go here with working kundalini until you really got everything on a physical level balanced. But at the same time, there's no reason on a regular basis, one of the easiest things you can be doing is the vitriol exercise.
And one of the most powerful. After 9 years of doing the vitriol, I can tell you that it's one of the most powerful things that led to our transformation is the regular use of that. And we embraced it. Coyote taught it. We embraced it. At first, very few of us other students did. It took years before more of them got back into doing it, because everybody's on their own pace. But keep doing that. Okay, next is... Oh, have we talked about personal practice today? Oh my gosh, I need to say something about personal practice.
This quote and this picture are the reason the slide's still in here.
You have self-awareness, conscious independent will, active imagination. Self-awareness, conscious independent will, and creative imagination. These give us the power to discern, to choose, to respond, to change. So, you've been taught a lot of techniques, and you haven't even been taught all the techniques that we know. There's more to come. You have to find what works for you to accomplish that goal of contact with your holy guardian angel, absorbing your shadow self, making contact with your essence, and finding out your true will so you can accomplish it. This kind of looks like somebody who's trying to do all of that all at the same time. And you have to place it all into a formal practice. And the formalities between you and yourself. I'm guiding you. Bonnie's guiding you. We're trying to teach you the things that we know work. Keep in mind this Toltec formula that we're teaching you is ancient. But it's possible some of the people who will watch this won't necessarily be drawn to the Toltec path. So that's why this class focuses on the core principles, and the core principle is you need to have a personal practice. you can't juggle too many balls at once unless you grow more arms. That's the lesson of this chart, right? So when you get good at starting to see the etheric bodies and the astral bodies, then you can train yourself to be doing different tasks with each of your bodies simultaneously. That's where these kind of ancient images of the Indian god with 8 arms comes from. It's because that represents a mastery of all your light bodies and being able to work them all at the same time. So all this stuff today, all this stuff, the last year and a half, however long some of you have been studying that with us, even longer if it's just purely the Akadwa. I'm not going to be there every day when you wake up and blow off writing in your dream journal to scold you. I'm not going to be there when you blow off your meditations or when you decide, oh, I'll read that next week. All I can do is teach you the formula, guarantee to you that it works, and reaffirm that time is of the essence because the world is changing rapidly. Bonnie and I had a conversation yesterday with Coyote, who was our teacher, of course, and he reaffirmed, yeah, time. There's an urgency here that we should all be feeling to make as much progress as we can, as fast as we can, and to encourage you to put away things that don't serve that purpose.
I'll go back. I just want to really quickly do a little quiz. So, can you put the cursor like on the different things in his hands? So, what is that telling you by looking at that symbol?
To be balanced.
No,
Okay, well,
just
there's
this symbol.
That's the Kundalini.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the caduceus, the symbol of the
Yeah,
Kundalini.
Caduceus.
The National Lottery.
I don't know.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, a 9-pointed star. This is some Egyptian symbols, and I'm not sure which
God
one
it
that is.
Yeah.
You've got Sagittarius.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Scorpio. You've got the all-seeing eye,
Or the third eye.
or the third eye. You've got.
Okay, so don't tell them. You're not supposed to be
Oh.
telling them. They were supposed to
Oh,
be telling
I
us.
like that. I like
Okay, so what's this?
It's one of the chakras.
Which one?
The throat.
But what's
the throat
symbol?
or the heart?
Yeah.
What's the symbol telling
What's the
us?
Oh,
symbol?
it is female going down.
Is it?
Female
Wait a
going
minute.
down?
No, wait a minute.
Is it?
What goes down? Male energy or female energy? Oh, come on.
Male
This
energy
is you
goes
need.
down.
Male energy goes
You
down.
all need to be
But
spanked.
What's this symbol here?
Isn't that also
Sun.
Earth? No, above you. Wasn't that also?
No,
No,
I'm
Earth
not
has
pointing that one.
line.
I'm pointing at this one.
No,
Earth.
the one we were first talking about the direction.
That's this.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what I was asking.
Is that Earth?
Isn't that also Earth?
No, Earth has the line that's water.
No.
No, water's over there.
Water
This
is
is
a
Earth.
triangle going down.
But it has,
Has
the
a
line
line in
through
it.
Not
See?
on this one. There's no line on it.
Yeah. Hold on. That's water. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to look at your handout right now. But so as far as energy going up or energy going down, what is a downward pointing?
It's the male.
It's the male. So then what's below that? What is it? I can't even see what it is.
It's the earth. It's
the
a symbol
earth.
of the
Okay. So
And down
energy
here is
coming
this-
down to the earth, and then you've got the
that's
sun.
obviously.
So
stars.
overall, is this a male or a female image?
But it's showing that the triangle going down is feminine.
The time
Okay,
going
can
down is
We
we
need
talk
to-
about that later? Okay.
Okay.
Because remember I said that's a whole different system,
Oh, okay.
and how you arrange those is not set in gold. That's a different system, and it was specifically because of the dryness, the wetness, the male and the female, the way they configured it that way. You can't hold anybody, including me or the internet or any book that you read, to a one single standard. what you have to know about all of these symbols is they can be arranged and used however you need to use them depending on what you know. So there isn't a right or wrong way of doing that. So that's why that's different. Do you understand?
Okay.
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 So just answer the question though, is this a male or a female image?
I would say a male image.
Okay. Why?
Well, mostly the descending,
Ascending, and
Symbology.
what's the sun represent?
the,
No.
Male,
yeah.
right? And, you know, there is the sexuality of the caduceus, and I'm assuming that's a male Egyptian god, and
I was assuming it was Ra, the sun god.
yeah,
Maybe
that
not.
would make sense. And then bringing the energy down to earth, and then of course, you know, Sagittarius is a masculine symbol.
Okay. This next slide, I want to talk about the idea of initiation. From the time of the very earliest semi-intelligent humans onward, there have been divine beings who brought knowledge to Earth to advance human evolution as a whole, and they did that by advancing individual evolutions for those who were farther along and ready for it. This is where the knowledge came from for all the ancient esoteric schools. Whether it's Egypt or Greece or Atlantis or Teotihuacan or anywhere else. These esoteric schools are distinguished by the fact that somebody in the school, the head of the school, has a connection to those higher planes, to the organization we know as the Great White Brotherhood. White meaning white light, brotherhood meaning fraternity of all mankind. So the initiation into a true esoteric school is your fastest way to spiritual evolution, to participate in the great work. This is some more symbolism, primarily Masonic, and we use that because there's a lot, Masonry's been around a long time, and there's a lot of symbolism available, and it's very accurate. So this represents the gateway and the entrance on the path. So you can think of your initiation into level 4, for those of you who have achieved it, as your first level initiation in this Toltec school. There are other potential initiations that may come later depending on your progress, and there's no guarantees of that fact. It's not like you just put your time in. When you experience an initiation on this plane, you pretty much know it. When you experience the higher level initiations, they are no longer, conducted on this plane. They are conducted in the higher planes. And again, you will know it. There will be no doubt that you just experienced something major, that it was an initiation, and that you will now be in a higher level performance, and there are higher level expectations being placed upon you. So, this has been around, it's always been here, sometimes hidden, sometimes like right now, overt, but always here. Any questions? There's an old, well, I don't know how old it is. There's an adage that floats around the New Age community that says, "Oh, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear." Coyote's version of that is a little different. When the student is tricked to start the path, then the teacher becomes obligated to guide them. That's certainly what happened to me. It's what happened to Bonnie. It's what's happening to you. So welcome to the club.
Thank you for being obligated.
Yeah. So to choose a path, or to have a path choose you, in my case, it depends on your past material, what you resonate with, and it will be pretty clear that you do resonate with something or you don't resonate with something. And that's not the same as feeling good that I talked about earlier. I resonated with this path. I knew I resonated with this path. And yet I knew it was going to be hard, and so I drug my feet at first. So until you have achieved enough attainment to absolutely with certainty know your true will, and to progress to the point where you can now go off on your own as the head of your own sphere of influence and do your will, we catch that bigger wave. We ride the big wave of the school that we enter. Coyote has his work individually, his school has its work, and we still interact with that. Even though we're up here now, I've formed this school. This is part of my work. And it's all part of spreading the Toltec information and knowledge over a wider range of geography. Has everyone heard the Who Pushed Me story? I don't want to repeat it. Okay.
I haven't.
Well, the guy has to swim across the pool to marry the girl.
Yeah, no, I haven't.
Okay. Really short. Big Texas billionaire has a beautiful daughter, wants to make sure that whoever marries her is worthy, so he invites all the eligible bachelors in the area over, and he has a swimming pool in his backyard full of crocodiles and electric eels and sharks, and he gives everybody a swimsuit and says, okay, you jump in at this end, and there's no way to climb out at this end, and there's only a way out at the other end, and he tells them it's alligators and crocodiles and all this stuff. And whoever gets there has a choice that they can make. When you get there, you can decide if you want half my wealth, or you can marry my daughter. And they're all standing around scratching their heads like, yeah, they want to marry the daughter, and yeah, half the wealth would be nice, and nobody's doing anything. And all of a sudden there's a splash, and one of them's in the water, and crap, so he starts swimming the other way, and fights the alligators, the crocodiles, the sharks, gets stung by eels, gets out the other end. The billionaire's, son, that was amazing. What do you want? Do you want half my wealth? No. That's wonderful. Do you want my daughter? No. Really? Then why did you do this? What do you want? He says, I want to know who the SOB is that pushed me. Somebody pushed us onto this path, and thank God for that. Mm-hmm. You have to know thyself. You have to know where your hot button triggers are, and you have to take responsibility for all of that, even the people who pushed you, and do your will. And that's how you pick a path and a teacher. And the goal is your true will. Some of the things you'll learn to do is distinguish between what's interesting versus what's important. You draw on your whole lifetime, actually not just this one, several lifetimes, and it's your personal will making sure it's in line with the great work. And now we're up to our final exercise.
Book?
Book?
Book.
Which book? Which book?
Oh.
She's Got It.
Oh.
The Act of that book?
This one?
Hold on. I didn't show them the other slides. If you guys want me to go back and show you those other slides, I can. But otherwise, we're going to do another meditation. And I just have this up there. I don't need to move over there.
Well, why don't you sit over there so that the people online can see a human?
Well, I would rather not.
Okay.
Because I can't see over there.
All right. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to shorten this a little bit because I don't really like to do guided meditations for the most part. So I'm going to be extracting out some information here. And this is a meditation in this book called The Vision Quest. And so what you're being asked to do is to go into this meditative state with a little bit of instruction, and then what you're looking for is not only confirmation of your path, but what that leads to. What is your will? What are you looking for a path for? And so whatever you happen to run into, you are interacting, not just watching and observing in this particular meditation. So you are, free to engage with whatever comes present for you. Okay? So get yourself to your place of power. So inside of the mountain is a dark cave, just big enough for you and a boat to float into. The river disappears into this cave, carrying you with the current. You drift along the river current inside the cave tunnel. At first, it is very quiet, except for the sound of the water lapping against the rocks. Occasionally, you see a figure or more perched on the rocks. They will be aspects of your personality, both positive and negative. Observe the insistent ones closely, for they will be clues to traits that may need correcting or reinforcing. But do not stop the boat. Let it continue on its way. Soon you see a lighted opening ahead, and the boat floats out into the sunlight. This new land is an area of the other world, much like our plane of existence, yet with differences. Here, animals, birds, and fish can talk. There is a slight difference in the makeup of the plants, both in looks and in the ability to communicate. This is a spirit plane where medicine men, shaman, priests, and priestesses come on vision quests. Here, it is possible for you to find animal allies, so you may be contacted by certain animals, fish, or birds. You may meet other shaman and spiritual teachers on this plane. Some have much knowledge to share. Some who have died to the physical realm work entirely with shaman seekers on this level. The boat drifts onto a sandy beach and you step out. The colors are vivid. The air filled with strange, wonderful scents. You feel a sense of anticipation. For on this plane, you can discover the goals you need to accomplish, the subjects you need to study, the helpers who can aid you in your shamanic journeys, the answers to your questions. Many little paths lead from the river through the trees. Beyond are clearings and little lakes, different groves of trees, meadows, and canyons. You can go anywhere you please. Take as much time as you need to explore. Be very alert for animals, birds, or fish that may approach you as allies and helpers. Don't feel foolish or be afraid to try communicating with various plants and trees here. There are no communication barriers in the other world. When you are ready to leave this other world, return to the river bank, step into the canoe, and let it carry you down the gentle river into the center of the brilliant light. As the light finally fades around you, you find yourself back in your physical body. So find a pathway that calls to you and allow yourself to journey there with the question and intent of knowing more about your true will and what on your path will be important to you. So if you have not already done so,
bring your communications to a close and return to the banks of the river. Enter into the canoe and let it carry you gently to the center of the brilliant light. And as that fades around you, find yourself back in your body and journal your experiences, and we'll speak to those in just a moment.
Go ahead and bring your writing to a close. Capture the last couple of bullet points if you need to. Did you want to download from this one?
Well, I'd like to just mention a few things that this book mentions. First of all, where these are guided visualizations, this particular type of work is what's called shamanic journeying. So, in this case, we're kind of, experiencing some of this information from that perspective. And what the book has to say about the journey that you just went through is, first of all, this is a space now that you can access and go to again. So if you've made some kind of connection with, you know how you got there in the canoe, and you got out and you looked at the paths and you chose one. In one way, can you see how this is very similar to doing the diaphanous shell, or basically that work where you're going into your parallel lives and looking at something. So this is now another space that you can go to, and what we're developing is mapping skills. So in your own understanding, you know how you got there, and you should be able to get back now. So this is something you can do again. And like it said, this is a plane, a space where, this is a spirit plane where medicine men, shaman, priests, and priestesses come on vision quests. So this is where you now can go to get some other higher level training, especially with specific questions. It says in the first few moments back after these shamanic journeys, the shaman will often find her or himself thinking of a power song, the spontaneous arising of words and music from the depths of the soul and the mind. You don't have to be able to compose a tune or rhyme words or be a poet to sing a power song. Often they're quite short or simple. The important thing is to let it flow without internal criticism. Let the joy in your heart find expression. A shaman may even feel led to dance, and again, this can be free expression without choreographed patterns. One thing in particular, and this, it says in this, because this book is emphasizing what shamans do, but this is very real in all ways of gaining and holding power. It says shamans usually do not share their experiences of allies and helpers with others, especially not with any non-believer. It is common belief that too much talking about them with non-shamans lessens the ties that might cause the loss of the animal ally. This is plausible since talking about magical rituals is known to lessen their effectiveness, if not outright kill the power raised. It's also for protection. You would now have a sacred connection with your allies. It's not like you want to be talking about them casually. So with that in mind, I'm not sure how we want to lead this particular discussion, other than, if there's specific questions you have about the process.
Let's stick to that.
Okay.
Do you have any questions about the process? You all understand it and can repeat it?
I think so.
Okay. Then we won't talk about anything personal from that.
Do you have questions?
Okay. Moving along. So, we've talked about a lot of ways, the nuts and bolts of the path of fulfilling your destiny, of accomplishing your true will. And this slide, this picture, the images here, as well as this Shakespeare quote, really kind of encapsulates the whole day. If you take one thing home from today, carefully look at the image and all that's there,
That's
And
amazing
know-
artwork.
that this above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man. What's the next slide?
Bucket lists.
Oh, the bucket list. Let's go to the bucket list.
It's up. You want me to do it?
Yeah, I don't know where the clicker is.
No.
The blink. Oh, it's over there. There's a movie out called The Bucket List, and it's like, okay, if you know you're going to die in 6 months because you've got a disease, what do you want to get done before you die? And people run around the world doing all these great and wonderful, fun, exciting, interesting things. So people start looking at their bucket list while they're still young, in their teens, 20s, 30s, saying, oh yeah, I got to do this, I got to do this. They plan their whole life around their bucket list items. But when you are on track and on purpose for the higher spiritual work, what is the one and only one item on your bucket list?
To do your true will.
Ding, ding, ding. That's it. There's only one thing. Do your true will, and it doesn't matter how long you live. If you get it done in 3 weeks and you're called home, good job. That was an efficient mission. And if some of us volunteered to be here a really long time because we drew the short straw and somebody had to come down and try to teach these blue pill world people something, well, then we might be here 1,000 years.
Maybe 2.
Oh, bite thy tongue. I agree to 1,000, not 2,000. What's our next slide?
Wake up. Oh,
So-
and then
Wake up.
questions.
And do we have any questions?
And then we were going to talk about questions.
Okay. So, before I do my next demonstration, are there any questions? Okay, I mentioned earlier, can you see what's on my lap in the camera, Bonnie?
Hold on.
She's in the library.
Hang on. So that's no. Now I can't. I mean, you just need to lift it up.
Now can you?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's suppose this is an object I wanted to cleanse energetically. Maybe it's a new stone, maybe it's a knob that fell off a curtain rod, whatever it is, but I want to cleanse it.
When you live with
So the goal is you put it on something where it's kind of suspended in air, and whatever you put it on needs to be non-conductive. And it's easiest if it's small, but you can use the same technique with your arms. You can get 2 people linked into if it's a really big object. And you're going to activate the Akadua and create a membrane of Akadua in this triangle shape.
Remember?
And then you're going to slowly lower this over the object, cleansing it energetically. One pass like that is all you need.
So the only thing, you need a glass container to hold it?
It could be glass, it could be wood, anything non-conductive.
Okay, glass.
That's why I said non-conductive.
And what would be a conductive thing?
Well, metals are it's electrically conductive. Is it
Okay.
an insulator or is it a conductor?
Okay, got
You
it.
move stuff and we're cutting your head off.
Oh, cut my head off again?
The Romans got big.
Is that-
revenge.
That's better.
Okay. So, questions. Well, then let's talk about questions. It is not the answer that enlightens you, it is the question. So you should regularly have questions. If you're reading, if you're studying, if you're meditating, if you're praying, there should be something in your mind that you don't know.
Well, I don't know the tree of life. I got lots of,
Okay.
I gotta study that to
Right.
know that, because it's like looking at a foreign language right now.
It is a foreign
Or-
language, very specifically a foreign
And
language.
at the end of this, I hope you realize it's your language. It's sacred geometry. And once you understand the sacred geometry, the rest of it will come in easy.
Yeah.
So focus on that.
Choose
right
to
now.
make it easy. That's a wise word of wisdom I got from the woman who was my teacher before I moved on to Coyote. I give her full credit for that. Choose to make it easy.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
We talked about kind of the overarching principles of the whole banishment thing,
Mhm.
but we didn't really talk very much about the hows.
Okay.
So
And that's not the scope of this class.
That's not the scope of this class. The scope of this class was to make you aware that those kind of things are possible. Because
Okay.
keep in mind, usually this class is offered to people who are not as far along their spiritual path as the most of you are.
okay.
So we would like to, when requested, have a workshop on 1 or 2 or 3 of the banishment techniques that we know, that we use, that are effective. And we're happy to teach that
Okay.
within the
Yes.
confines of the school. It's not offered to people who aren't in the school.
I would love that.
Okay? So when requested, we will do that.
Does it have to be requested in writing, or can we request it now?
By request it, we need to pick a time, we need to look at the schedules, we need to come up with a date, and I need someone who is a student to take the lead on organizing that. You already got the lead on organizing something, and you
Yes.
owe me a call or a conversation.
Oh, I needed to find out whether you had your calendar yet.
So,
So I was just
Oh, I
gonna
didn't
comment
get
on what you
this.
just said.
Okay.
Well, yeah, it was sent to you a couple days ago. So
Okay.
the thing about it is, there needs to be a need, not just that one person would like that. You know, when last time we were talking about a bunch of different classes, you know, like Sarah says, sign me up for all of them. Great, and there needs to be a collective need for that. You know, so be tapping into what do you really need, what instruction is going to be valuable to you. We're not here to just pass on random knowledge. You got to be
Yeah.
using it. So in one way, you guys need to take what you have and work with that, and ask questions about what it is, and get it worked into your personal practice, so that you're actually doing. Because you're not going to have any higher level questions about that until you do it.
right.
So like I have a bunch of questions now about how to make this fat flush diet work, because I'm actually doing it. It's not just theoretical knowledge, and I'm like, okay, well I need to do this, this, and this. So until you actually engage in it, you're not going to have anything other than a theoretical question.
And this is a really good conversation. It actually ties in to this concept of having a good question. That a good question is one that continually comes to your mind. It's a burning desire from deep within. I gotta know this. Why the heck do I have this feeling that there's something I'm supposed to do, something important? You know, that burned on me for years. And all my acquaintances at the time were completely blue pill world people, and anybody I shared that notion with laughed at me. Oh, you're just being ego because you think you want to be something more important than anybody else. It's got nothing to do with more important than anybody else. It's got to do with me doing what I'm doing. So that burning desire from deep within over something that you need to know, how to do something, whatever. It goes back to that model of you're taken to God's door and sat in front of him, and you get to ask one question. Now maybe you're not limited to one. But what's the first one you're going to ask? Make it a good one.
Good? Are we doing okay, God?
Am I on my path?
Make it a good one.
Yeah, make it a good question.
Make it a good question. So when you've looked at all this, if it's a question that you can and should know the answer to, that's probably not one you want to take to God's gate and ask him.
Or her.
If it's in your textbooks, if it's on the internet, you know, like, who won the Rose Bowl in 1924. I have no idea, by the way. You can look that up. You don't need to ask God. But it should be around your true will. It should revolve around the great work. It should revolve around your path. Something.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the work is in the search. You know, if we could just all just, you know, get the secret download to the universe, and then we are good with God, and we don't have to worry about anything. Where's the learning process in that? So part of the thing about being tricked onto a path is that sometimes we just never would get there. We'd never push ourselves far enough. We'd never ask the right questions. So riding that bigger wave is working with those who are and asking those questions and pushing themselves. I mean, you know, he's a smart, intelligent guy. He doesn't need to be sitting here on a Saturday talking about the rudimentary fundamentals of a spiritual path. But there's something that is driving him to do that. He has learned that experience, and now he's sharing it with others. So.
Oh, I have an ulterior motive.
Well, yeah, I know, but we.
You're tricking us.
I have an ulterior motive.
You
That's
know
why
it.
I'm here teaching rudimentary skills. Because my goal is to get you far enough along that you're no longer at a rudimentary level. And then we can actually do something. What that is, I won't tell you yet.
But you know.
I know a lot of it. Can't claim to know all of it, because I don't. But
Yeah.
I know a lot of it.
I would like to get to the point where I know where I am on the tree of life.
Okay?
Well, we all would, but the thing I can tell you where you are for sure is in Malkuth.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, we got to get the Malkuthian stuff done.
Mm-hmm.
I think all of us are good at working in the higher realms, and we're actually more comfortable there than we are here.
And you can't go any higher until you get your Malkuth a little more under control. Whether that's your physical health, whether that's your economic situation, whether it's mastering gardening and farming, which helped us a lot when we moved up here almost 10 years ago. There's a big difference between farming theory and farming practice.
So maybe we need a more Makuth classes of some sort.
So this is something that was sent to all of you. I don't know if you read it. I don't know if you downloaded it. I don't know if you're even attempting to do anything with it. But this is
I'm not getting
this
some
is
of the
what
emails.
was given to you guys, and this is basically on one side. These are the steps to suggested personal practice for the newly awakened, which you all fall into the category of that. If you watch Beetlejuice, it's, you know, like the manual for the
Newly deceased.
right. Well, this is for the newly awakened. These are just suggestions. These are not saying that they fit or in any way correspond with your life. They're very generic. You know, the journaling, the meditation, the reading, the exercise, it's a personal practice. That's a spiritual practice. Okay, and that's what we all need to get. But at the same time, if we don't even know how to, like, you know, get our ordinary reality life balanced in some way, then we're never going to have time for this other stuff. And so some of this is like, I'm realizing like 3 things in one. This suggested daily schedule is in one way, you know, it's not unreasonable to be up by 10 o'clock dressed and ready to do something, you know. So whatever your life looks like, see how these things might fit in, or what they might replace, or what they might already, you know, where they may already be there. And so on the flip side of this is an empty schedule. And it's things to trigger you. And I gave you each a couple of them just so you can figure out how you can integrate something like this into your life. In this particular case, having an intent for the day. Okay, well, this is my day off, and my intent is to sleep in and drink margaritas all night. Okay, well, write it down, because that happens to be what you're telling your subconscious, and if you're gonna do it, you might as well be successful at it, right?
Right, you can build personal power if you say, I'm going to drink 5 margaritas, and then you actually do it. That may not be the best way to build personal power, but you will build some. If you only drink 3 and pass out, you will lose personal power.
So also mixed in here is, this is stuff that comes from the Fat Flush Plan, but it is also reflective of Dr. Cage's work and what he recommends, and it's also just plain good healthy eating, and it's going to eliminate a lot of the issues people have with diabetes and just weight gain in general or whatever. But if this is more of an order of operation, okay, don't eat any sugar before noon. You know, if you don't do that, it's going to really change your life around. Get protein in before you start your day, not, you know, McDonald's on the way to work kind of thing. And so these are just when it says, okay, from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. You may be asleep right now, okay? We're not talking about getting dressed and out the door. What time do you have to go to work?
I'm up at 5.
Okay, so
I'm already doing
see,
a lot of
she's
this.
already doing a lot of this because she has
Bless
to
your
be
heart.
on a schedule, right?
And she's a mom, so that kind
Yeah.
of drives it.
But what's also mixed in here is things that are good for you, you know, in that kind of regular schedule. You know, if you're at home and breastfeeding your baby and, you know, you guys are there laying on the bed, chilled out, use that as your meditation time. You know, there's you know, when your knee is out, you can't hike with your friends, you know, on Mount Shasta, then put your knee up, make yourself a cup of tea, and do your meditation or do your, you know, practice your
Or
whatever.
Yeah, the
Read.
homework.
So it doesn't matter where or when you know, put these things in, but just realize that there's a flow. And once you start getting a handle on the flow of your life, and still
This is
allowing
good. This
for
is
these
good.
like little windows of time when you can actually do something. It doesn't have to be big. We're talking about, I mean, if you're not doing anything right now, 2 minutes of anything is going to be better, right? So, you know, stretching. You know, sometimes I can't walk. I go to get up and it's like I want to go to the bathroom in the morning and I can't even move. So I have to sit here and kind of stretch. This is my half of a lotus position because I can't get my stiff butt on the floor. And so then I do the other half of my, you know, lotus position where I'm stretching everything in my hips and, you know, all that. You know, and I do it, you know, a few of these and 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 these and these, and then I can at least move, you know. So you got to start somewhere, and so that is the best I can do to help you begin a personal practice.
Well, you gotta modify to what you can, like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And not
that
beat
right
yourself
there? That's
up
a
that you
camera. You're
can't
on
do the
TV
full
right now.
lotus.
Right. Exactly.
Or I can't go walking,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
with our knees.
So I want to tell you, I did get this and I did read this.
Okay.
And I thought it was very good, except for the 6 o'clock in the morning.
Right. So
But
I
I
mean,
realized you weren't.
So 5 is
in
better.
stone.
3 would be even
Are you
better.
telling me I can't go to bed till 5 in the morning?
but I think the thing is that it doesn't mean you're dressed and awaking to an alarm clock and throwing yourself out in the snow at 8 a.m. either. It just means you're somewhat coherent. You've got up, gone to the bathroom, drank your tea, journaled your dreams, you know. Just start moving, you know, so that you're starting your day.
It's a
And
ritual.
eventually you're going to find that you're going to sleep better at night because you're going to bed at a more regular time. Now, he's a morning person, I'm a night person. So in one way it works because if he gets up at 5:30 a.m. and I don't even get up till, and I don't necessarily even out of bed. Remember, we're supposed to be doing our joint meditation thing at 7 a.m. So sometimes I'm just coherent, but I'm still horizontal, right, when I'm doing that. But at least at 7 a.m. I'm at least somewhat, you know,
Well, you can
Coming
meditate
back.
laying down.
yeah, exactly. And actually a really good thing is to get up, go to the bathroom, maybe get a drink of water or something, and then lay down again, because you're going to go into the dreaming. So make that a conscious dreaming time rather than, I gotta sleep for another hour.
You said before that you guys do the big drill lying down.
Yeah.
Before
Sometimes
you even out of bed.
Right.
So
we did it sitting up. Was that today or yesterday?
Because
Yeah.
we were coughing too
Yesterday,
much.
yeah.
yeah, you could do stretching while you're in bed. Like
Yeah.
be like a cat.
So
Before
the
they
point
get up.
is, whatever your personal practice is at now, it can be kicked up a few notches.
Of course.
Go
Right.
one notch at a time, but
Right,
go.
right.
And so the only other thing I want to put out, since we're all here, there's going to be an email coming out that's going to have, because we did just go over the calendar, and there's like 3 or 4 health related, both spiritual health and physical health related courses that are going to be coming up. I think most of you saw the one for Nina's thing.
March 9th.
Right.
March
So
9th.
all 4 of these are going to be on the same sheet of paper, and they're in addition to what's already on the calendar, but they are on the calendar.
And these are open to the public.
Okay.
Now, I want to make sure everyone in the school knows how to access the Toltec Shamanic Arts website. .org.
Alright.
Okay, you have a homework assignment. I want you to all log into that and send me an email from there. And we also want to make sure, I did do a ping recently on, just to make sure if I needed to send a messenger through Facebook that I could. What I just want to reiterate is the fact that when I sit at my computer and send something, it may end up on your phone. And you may not have the time to read a 6-page document. But if I've sent you an email, you really need to read it, and I need some kind of response that, hey, I got this, I'll get back to you. Otherwise,
Okay.
I'm going to keep bugging you about it.
Okay.
Right.
Like Sarah finally had to say, okay, I'm coming, But there's people in the school who have never even responded to whether they would be here or not. And so that's not cool. I need to know whether you're coming, and all of that. The second thing is the emails in particular are going to have the most pertinent information for the school. So if you don't have time to read it, make sure you do read it at some point, okay? Because it's just for you, and we're not jumping through all these hoops for no good reason.
So just as a reminder, the reason we use more emails than text messages is length and complexity of what we're sending. We can type a document and prepare it and get it all the facts right, and that might take a day or two as we get information coming in. And then we send it out with an email because we can send PDFs or Word files as attachments.
Then I go to Pages and print it out. Because
However you could do it,
Yeah.
okay, is fine. If you bought, anyway,
Yeah.
little printer, you could print directly from your phone.
Oh, wow.
The key is if it's a short question and a short answer, texting works well and in often cases better because you don't have to be at your computer to get the email. But anything complex is going out with emails. At this day and age, that is expected that everyone has an email and looks at it and uses it. And if not, we could be sending you the secrets to the universe, and if you don't feel like logging in this week and you let all your emails back up, you may never see the secrets of the universe email we sent, and you might miss the mothership when it comes. It's like the cartoons of Noah's Ark sailing away, and these 2 dinosaurs looking each other and said at each other saying, "Shoot, was that today?" So don't be like those dinosaurs. Read your email and respond.
And in which case, I know for a fact that, we all forget things, right? But calling us shouldn't be the first line of what time does the event start. So, because all that information has been given out like 5 times and it's never changed. Now, regarding the price, I'll just say this again, for students of the school, you need to contact us for what the student discount
Is it
is.
still
Yeah,
on?
there's a student discount. Yeah, we're still online.
Yeah.
So there's a student discount. Anybody who's not a student knows that now that, yeah, we give our students a discount. And what that discount is, you only find out if you ever become a student.
And for those of you who are a student, you should know what the formula
Already know what
is.
it is. So when you see an advertised price, you should automatically know what your price is. So, okay, we're gonna wrap it up unless anybody has more questions.
Can you repeat the website that we, for our homework?
Toltec Arts.
ToltecShamanicarts.org.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, let's go offline.
Okay. The reason a lot of this is important